Hey y'all, welcome to week 10 of The Artist Way on my channel, the Rose Colored channel. I am going to be very honest. I finished the book, Artist Way. I'm gonna parse it out on segments because I feel like that's still what I would want to know is like my weekly updates. I'm so done with this book. I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I've been in this like bigger cycle outside of Artist Way that's been very like self-help oriented, and I'm just kind of to the point where it's like shit or get off the pot, you know? And that's all I'm gonna say about that. So I think that I'm just at the point where like I was having a discussion with my husband about it too, Mike, and I feel like I was just at the point where like I kind of know, I mean, especially too, like even within the Artist Way book, it's super repetitive. Like I kind of already know the things she's saying. Like I'm not gonna get over the fact that she thinks she invented fucking journaling. And she's like continued to reiterate that, and that's been her like mic drop aha moment. And each chapter is like, go back to journaling. And it's like, I'm glad journaling solved all your problems, Julia Cameron. So I feel like these are going to be kind of like short summarizations of chapters just because I'm kind of fucking done. But I do think, like, I don't know, I think just to like prove to myself mainly that like I can finish things and I can do a complete front to finish thing, and like I'm not going to give up and I'm not going to quit. I was like, I need to do the last couple chapters. I'm going to finish the book, and I feel like I might as well make it 3 weeks worth of content because I fucking got it. And I'm lazy in that aspect. I think too, like I've been focusing a lot of energy on this and doing the Artist Way and stuff. And it's like to the point where it's like kind of even to what she says of like not forcing myself to like work a certain way or this or that. It's like I think like I know myself well enough at this point to be able to say like, hey, this chapter wasn't, I don't need to sit on this chapter for a week. I can move on to the next chapter. And the information, sorry, I am just like, that's what I needed. I don't need to sit on this chapter for a week. I just need to know myself and know, okay, absorbed, already learned, already knew, something I don't need to like integrate in. So I'm going to move on and do the next chapter. And that's kind of like the last 3 chapters. Honestly, I wish I would have done that. I think I would have been more motivated through the midpoint and not been so stuck on like some of the negative aspects to me about the book. If I had just like, okay, that was a chapter. I don't really need to give any more energy to that chapter because that was another thing too that I talked to my husband about is this book was really good to teach you how to get like started on journaling. But it was kind of like dredging up a lot of things. And there were aspects where she was like dredging up a lot of things to like prove to you like, hey, this is why you do this, so you shouldn't do this anymore because it's coming from this. But in the same vein too, it's like starting to give yourself therapy to like recognize like problems and recognize like issues that you have, but she's not really necessarily offering any solutions other than like fucking journal. So I don't know. This is, again, it's just like a really self-help book and not a whole lot of actual like doing advice, I guess, if that makes sense. Like I would say there's about like 30% of actual like creative, here's how to handle your creative advice. 40% is don't do this, avoid these people, protect yourself, blah blah blah. And then the other 30% is just like whatever Julia Cameron I felt that day, I guess. That was an adventure of a sentence. So back to chapter 10. This one was about self-protection, speak of the devil. And I think, again, it's just like really reiterating, like, don't get stuck in spaces that don't feel right, don't get stuck with people that don't feel right, and trust yourself. Like, I think I had this discussion with my husband actually this week of like the difference between like different types of anxiety. And there's the I don't want to do this anxiety because I don't want to do it. There's the I want to do this, but I want to do it well, so I'm nervous that I'm not going to do it well, etc., etc. So I should do that thing, but maybe I don't do the thing I don't want to do unless it's like absolutely necessary. So don't do the anxiety that's you just don't want to do the thing. Do push through the anxiety that is I want to do this well, or I'm not sure if I'm good enough for this. That's the anxiety that you need to ignore. And then there's the third anxiety. I don't remember. Not relevant. But I think those two are the important ones of like the anxiety of like, I just don't want to do this or it doesn't feel right. Oh, that's it. The third one is this doesn't feel right type of anxiety of like, this is dangerous. There's really good cause for this anxiety. Somebody might get hurt physically, emotionally, etc. So I think it's definitely like important to be able to discern for yourself like what type of anxiety it is, because I think that definitely makes a difference on like, you know, I feel like I was really good in high school and middle school of like I was in my theater program and like performing and being on stage. I was also in band too that did that a lot too. So performing and being on stage, like nervous wreck, shaking. I just like was so anxious. And even just like giving like I like had 12 students in each class. So it wasn't like I had like a big class, and even giving like speeches in front of like that what like made me a fucking nervous wreck. So I think that's like, to me, that's like I was able to discern really well of like, yes, theater makes me nervous, but I also really love it, and it's because I want to do a good job. So that's something I should like push past, or band was the same way, versus like the speech in front of my classmates. Well, you know, I had very different opinions than a lot of my like peers. So, and I was also pretty vocal about it in the same vein too. So I think like being put on the spot to like explain those very different views than somebody, the rest of my class, that wasn't really like up for negotiation. Like it wasn't something that like we were having like constructive conversations on. That I think that's something that you should like, you can tell like this doesn't feel right. I'm not going to gain anything by this by like pushing through my anxiety. If anything, like I think those moments like made me more anxious to be in a group setting or to like voice my opinions, etc. So, to all those English teachers who are like, you're gonna have to public speak in any job you do, and this is gonna help you do it. Well, so, I think honestly, like that would be my biggest advice from this chapter is just like understanding and identifying. She talks about like identifying your resistance, which is like basically your anxiety, and the different ways it like comes out. Like for one, she talks about like fame, and that's like really focusing on the success and really focusing on like the end product, and that's where like the anxiety comes out of like I have to do this certain way or do it in whatever like amount of time, blah blah blah. So then you're less focused on the process and less focused on enjoying the process, enjoying like what you're creating, and more focused on like an end product or an end result. And so I think something that like I've kind of been working on in general that this book has really like made a point of saying is like fame is just another shortcut for self-approval. What you're doing is you're looking at accolades, money, attention as like validation for yourself or for your art, when what you really need to be doing is just giving yourself that validation, giving yourself that like go ahead, support, etc. So I thought that was really interesting. Love that take on it. Another thing she talks about that I really like is competition, and just like the formula of competition is like comparison and being in a state of lack. And I think like that's really important. Again, coming back to like, I think I grew up with this idea that like if I'm in competition with somebody, then there's only one winner. There's one winner and everybody else loses. Especially in like sports, that's really reiterated a lot. So many flashbacks, so many tangents I could go on, but not the time. So I think I really like that because I think especially more in the art world and the art realm, like everybody can produce their art piece, and I'm sure there's like people can watch multiple things. Like just because you're a fan of White Lotus doesn't mean you can't be a fan of Love Island. And I think we don't give, it's kind of like every time there's a girls girl movie and women show up and show their buying power, and people are like, what? Women have buying power? Women are a major part of this economy? We could create things for women and it would do well? Shocking. So I think it like definitely falls into that of like there's a like don't get into a lack of like because somebody else is producing something or somebody else gets this opportunity or blah blah blah, that doesn't mean that like either A, that wasn't my opportunity to take and wasn't right for me, and B, I think it's important that like artists support other artists, and I think it's like important to like view other artists as like we're all working towards this like greater creative collaborative goal of like speaking, especially too like people in your community, like speaking out about like problems and creating art and creating a story and sharing stories, rather than like, well, my story is more important than your story to tell, or it's like, because you were able to produce your story, I can't produce my story or whatever. So I think I really like that like formula of like competition is just like comparison, and lack, which are the same thing too, kind of. So, final thing I think I really like is when you're in like a lack state or like in a competitive state, you make a lot of like snap judgments. And I think that even goes to like when you're in like an anxiety state, you make a lot of like snap quick judgments. And I think that's something like, to me, that's like a good trigger to be like, oh, I'm in this state. I need to figure out how to like regulate myself and come back so I can come back at this in the way, like I can approach this in the way that I want to approach this. And I'm not just like making panic decisions because I feel like that's what I need to. And brings me back to my original goal with this book is to not, which I don't feel like she like offers solutions on like how to regulate your system, but I do feel like she like offers like, here's how to notice that, here's the trigger, and then I guess you have to figure out how to regulate your system. And as somebody who like, that was not a discussion, that was not like, here's how to help yourself, here's how to calm yourself down, like that was not a thing in my family. Like that would have been really fucking important had I not done a lot of previous self-help things prior to this book. That would have been like really kind of detrimental in me finishing The Artist's Way, because I feel like I would have been all out of whack and not know how to regulate myself. So then I would just constantly be triggering myself with no real solution on how to like calm myself through the trigger, etc. So I think that it is like, I love the idea of like noticing like, hey, when I'm making these quick judgments or I'm being really reactive, like that's me in my anxiety state and that's the trigger. But I also think in conjunction with that, you need to have like some type of like self-regulating thing, whether it's like reframing your mind and sometimes you do that through journaling, but she didn't really explain that. She just said, fucking write in your pages. So I don't know. Trying not to complain too much. So we will be done. I'm going to wrap it up. Find self-soothing, self-regulating things. Honestly, literally type it into Pinterest. You can find a bunch of shit. I'm sure if you typed it into TikTok too, you'd find a whole lot of therapists being like, working you through like breathing exercises and stuff like that. So there are resources out there right now. But in the fucking 80s, there wouldn't have been. This was released, actually, I need to correct some things. First, my husband said I cannot fight Julia Cameron. She's an old lady, and therefore I can't beat her up. Fine. I will accept defeat. From my husband only. Second, I keep saying this was like released in the 80s. I think it was, the official book was like originally published in 1992. And she's updated, especially the version I read is the updated version. So I don't remember when that one came out, but that's something to keep in mind too, I guess, of like, it wasn't quite the 80s, but also like, it was a time before we had like access to like easy internet. And I think that's kind of important. I think, especially too, like, really, like, I had access to internet a lot more than like anybody did previously before my generation, but we were still like early internet. I don't think like people have been talking about like mental health or self-regulating or self-soothing, that type of stuff, like as a like public until like at least 2015, if not later. That is 100% just my own observation as a single individual in America. But that's. So that's it. That's all I got. Thank you all for listening. I hope you have a great day. I hope you get through the book and learn how to self-regulate without the book's help. And I hope you create a lot of beautiful, wonderful, amazing things. And